Hey Lan, folks, it's Lev. Welcome back to another video. For those of you who are new, I use he and pronouns. Before I start the video, I just want to share something about Melbourne weather. So I live in Melbourne, Australia, and it's December here, and it's December around the world. It's December, so it's summer. Summer runs from December, January, February. Today was like 14 degrees, and it was point in day where it was like 12 degrees. It was literally like the middle of winter. And I pulled out my pulled out my stockings and warm clothes. Like it was literally the middle of winter, even though it's meant to be summer. So that's Melbourne. You might have heard 4 seasons in one day. So if you come to Melbourne from overseas or interstate and haven't been here before, it's wild. Melbourne weather's wild. It could be sunny and 30 something degrees one in the morning, and then at night drips down freezing cold. So Melbourne be like that. This video I want to talk about how I've been doing since the relationship breakup 2 months ago, and just more reflections, more thoughts and stuff like that. Just my brain dump about relationships. So I made a video I don't know when, but I think it was last month or October. I really don't remember at this point. Probably October, about breakup with my ex. It was 2 months ago and a few days. I can't believe 2 months has already passed since it happened. It doesn't feel like 2 months since it happened. But yeah, over 2 months and a few days since it happened. And I'm doing a lot better. And the resentment I had, I guess the first thing is the resentment I had early on. I still feel a little bit. I'm not saying it's 100% gone, but the resentment, the anger, the feelings of ickiness, and the feeling that comes with the lack of closure. I don't have the words to describe these feelings, but I did talk to my therapist about this resentment, and it's actually more icky and more complicated and chaotic in a way because I don't have proper closure. It just ended abruptly. I didn't get the answers I wanted. There was no mutual ending, proper communication about it, because they weren't willing or ready or whatever, willing to talk about it. It was just messy because it's just a loose end here, and then I'd never tied it up. And it's I guess early on it was harder for me to accept that this has ended with loose ends, and I'm not gonna get closure from the other person about this whole situation. And I guess with time, just allow myself to feel the chaotic resentment and whatever feelings may come up about the relationship ending and that whole situation has helped a lot, because I tend to be one who likes being proactive. And I'm okay, I'm feeling this way. What should I do about it? Ask my friends, my therapist, what can I do? I hate feeling this way. What can I do about it? And there's nothing I could really do about it but sit here and, in a way, not sit here and just drown in it and not get on with my life and do other activities. But when it comes, acknowledge the feeling and let it exist, basically. Let it exist without having power over me. And that's exactly what I've been doing the past 2 months. And I still feel I guess when I think about it, a little bit of annoyance about the lack of closure, but it's not it's my brain and I guess my world isn't revolved around this whole ex breakup incident and the whole I need closure, I need answers, and the only thing that I can do right now is trying to find answers, and I can't function so that it's not like that anymore. It's I just look back now and smile in a way when I listen to music about relationships and whatnot. I just smile now because I'm glad it happened, but I'm also glad it ended. Initially, I didn't want it to end, but now looking back at it, I'm glad it ended for a lot of reasons. I think I said something in my last video, but I'm going to share my thoughts about it now. And in terms of reclaiming power, I've very much so done that. Again, I didn't lose myself. I didn't lose myself initially when the whole breakup happened, but now it's just, actually I'll elaborate on this a little later, but I had a point I wanted to say first. 1 second. Oh yeah, one aspect of reclaiming power is basically not carrying the responsibility. It's like the stuff they need to work on and the communication and the willingness to discuss stuff and the willingness to fight, the willingness to work through conflict in relationships and not run. And running, definitely, that is. Running is also a very valid strategy, and I'll elaborate on that later. But running forever and just not being transparent, all of that stuff, I had to deal with when I was in a relationship with them. But now it's like, I mentioned the elevator, once it ended, even though it was unexpected, but this weight lifted off my shoulder. It's like, I'm no longer carrying the weight of that responsibility, the stuff they need to work on. Everyone has baggage, right? But then if everyone has baggage, I have baggage as well. But if the person is not willing to take accountability for it and then it plays into the relationship, that's not fair on the other person. So I was like, throughout the relationship, I'm not saying I carried all of their baggage, but it was a lot of the weight and the baggage that they weren't willing or ready or whatever, willing to work on, willing to take accountability for. It was a lot of redirecting and blaming and stuff. I had to carry that, and now I no longer carry it. And the linking to the point is, put that responsibility back on them. It's like, it's not my responsibility. I'm no longer carrying this weight. Just in my head mentally, just literally just yeeting all of this back at them. It's like returning all this to you. It's no longer mine. I'm no longer tied to this. Or you know, I'm not in the picture of your world. You're not in the picture of my world. We're going about our separate ways, different paths, and we're not gonna run into each other. Yeah. Since the breakup, it's like I have so much more time, and I feel a lot more balanced. I feel significantly more balanced because I guess in terms of dating in general, it's a lot of work, and I guess the relationships that, I guess how I engage in relationships, should I say. Not saying this is everyone's experiences, not saying that this is the only way to, I guess, navigate relationships. This is how I do it personally. I don't date for fun, as in I don't date just for the sake of dating. And it's like when I date someone, it's like intentional. It's like put in effort, build a connection because I see, or I see myself, or I would like to, I guess, be with this person long term. It's not like I'm in a relationship with someone for 3 months just for fun or this short term thing, and then 3 months later we both part ways. Like I personally don't do that because it's a lot of time and effort and energy from me, and it's just too much and it's not enjoyable for me. But if that's something you're after and you like, that's completely okay. It just does not work for me. So what was I trying to say? Independence, time. Relationships are a lot of work for me. Building rapport, putting in effort, seeing them, having calls, just being in a relationship in general takes out a lot of my energy. And while I was in the relationship with my ex, I felt off balance because I had less time to do the stuff that I usually do. I spent less time talking to friends, even online. I spent less time hanging out with friends. I spent less time doing stuff for myself because all of that energy I basically devoted to the relationship. A lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it was devoted to the relationship, maintaining it, seeing my ex at the time, seeing my partner at the time, who's now my ex, and all that. And I didn't know how to find a proper balance between relationship and the rest of my life. Therefore, the scale was tipped this way, yes, because relationship had more weight. So it was it was taking a lot of my battery. It was taking a lot of my battery. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I guess especially at the start where there's like the excitement and there's like trying to get to know each other and hang out a lot. But actually, not just the start and just a relationship in general. There has to be a balance. And one problem I realize now in hindsight is that they weren't willing to do their part in a way. They weren't willing to fight. They weren't willing to take accountability. They weren't willing to take accountability. And that's where I felt frustrated at stuff. That's where I felt frustrated at stuff. It's like venting is okay. It's okay to complain about things. But if we, including me, just vent and just complain and don't take action to change our situation, nothing is going to change. That's the harsh reality. It's like, I can sit here and complain about my life and how much I hate certain things, which is completely valid. I'm not saying we don't vent. That's important to get out our emotions and our thoughts and stuff. But that's not a solution to directly address the problem. That just helps with us deal with stuff emotionally. For example, I was plagued by internalized transphobia when I first came out as trans. This is not relationship related, just an example of taking action. I was plagued by internalized transphobia. I hated myself. I saw myself as a freak, abomination. I was shit scared in living as my truth in the world, even using men's restrooms at the time, just existing as myself. And I absolutely hated myself because that's what I've learned. And going through gender therapy, confronting that, starting the process confronting that, not saying I finish gender therapy and boom, it's like all gone and I feel completely confident. It built over time, confidence built over time. And continuing to break internalized transphobia happens over time. But it requires work on my part. Say if I went to a gender therapist and I wasn't willing to talk or open up or be honest and be accountable, then nothing would change, and to this day I would still be in the exact same headspace as I was 3 years ago if I didn't take action. What's the point of this? Yes, nothing changes until action is taken. It's like, yes, certain situations can be very shitty. I'm not saying anyone deserves to be in a shitty situation, but that all of us have power. We all have power, even in situations where we think we are completely powerless. There is a degree of power we hold. There's a degree of control we hold. I'm not saying we can change every single thing about a certain situation, but there are things we can control. And that's where we need to take accountability for change. And the point of all this is, me saying all this is with my ex, to me, I believe that it really did come off as a lot of complaining and going in circles and circles again and again and again, and not really taking action to change the situation. Or, yeah. And something my ex did mention to me is they don't know where they'll be in 5-10 years time. Like, this has happened in the last call we had when I was trying to get answers. They said they don't know where they'll be in 5-10 years time, and they're probably going to be stuck in the same situation, and that screams at me already. If someone is in the same situation, like their situation, I know about this, I'm not going to explain that, but I know their situation. If they're in the same spot, exact same spot 10 years down the road, that already screams at me, you're not taking accountability, you're not taking action, you're just waiting for someone to do the work for you, which is not going to happen. Yeah. Another thing that I realized is important for me in future relationship is someone who's willing to fight honestly. It's like, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm far from perfect. I make mistakes. I fuck up. But what allows me to grow personally, even though I absolutely hate it, is admitting that I'm wrong at times, admitting that I'm wrong, apologizing for it, owning my own actions, taking accountability for my own actions. In a non, like, it's not taking accountability in a like fine kind of way, like genuinely wanting to learn from it is different from being like in a, I don't know the word for it, but just doing it to make the other person happy type of thing, like fine, I'm sorry, and stuff. Like doing it begrudgingly is different from genuine being like, I'm like sorry, and like I'm willing to learn from this incident or situation. To me, that's two very different things. What was I saying? Fight. Sorry, my brain. It's like, I don't know what. It's like almost 11 o'clock p.m. here. Yes, willing to fight. It's like, for example, conflicts in relationships are natural. Partners have to disagree. It's like, it's fights are bound to happen. Disagreements are bound to happen. Conflict is bound to happen. That's the nature of the game of relationships. No one agrees on everything, and there's like always going to be friction, a degree of friction. But it's not the friction, to me, it's not the conflict itself or the friction that's the problem, it's the way it's handled. If there's a conflict and two people, maybe yelling at each other, bickering, but later make up and work through it together and have civil conversations about it and work through it together and use it to grow the relationship and strengthen the relationship, that is beautiful. What doesn't work for me is if there's a conflict and one person's willing to fight and talk about it and, own up to their actions, but the other person is just running away and denying and blaming and denying and avoiding. That just doesn't work. And that's what happened a lot in me and my ex's relationship, because we didn't really fight, which to me felt very weird. And there was that one incident where I got annoyed and they shut down, and when I try to talk to them about it later on, it's just like they're saying they don't remember stuff, and I'm like, I can't, in my head I'm like, I really can't work with this. Like I can't work with this. Like it's like it happened. We can't even talk about it properly to learn from it and grow from it, because complete shutdown and avoidance. Well, I'm here trying to be like, hey, let's talk. Like that really doesn't work for me. I'll give you a recent example of conflict I had with another person in my life. My colleague. So the gist of it is, I'm a trans guy. They're a cis ally. It was Trans Awareness Week, and they really wanted to do something to support the trans community, and other people in my org were like redirecting them to me because I'm like the trans guy who makes YouTube content and very like heavy on advocacy stuff, right? So other people redirected this person to me, and we had a convo, and their heart was good. Their intention was in a good place to wanting to support trans community and having all this passion and enthusiasm. But the first meeting delivery, the way they approach conversation with me was awful. And it came off as me being the token trans guy in the workplace. And a lot of inappropriate questions were asked for the first meeting. Very invasive, personal stuff that it can come off as being transphobia. That hurt me, that hurt him. We avoided each other. That was like hard for me to come to work for that period of time until it was resolved. It was hard for me to come to work. I couldn't work because I was in a really bad headspace, and coming to work would remind me of this traumatic incident that happened between me and him. And I was really angry, and I had all these emotions, like, oh, this person, like, how can you talk to me like this? Like, unbelievable. Like, I was like, you should know better and stuff. And then let the emotions, that was like really bugging me, and I had to let allow myself time to like feel the emotions and let it settle down before I take some rash action. And then there was a mediated meeting. We had mediated meeting, very intense meeting. It was like the first time I saw him since the incident, and first time I spoke to him since the incident, and it was very intense, very, very intense. We're both very nervous, and it was very uncomfortable. And then we had that, and then I organized a separate one-on-one meeting with him like a week after to really flesh it out. And my proposal to him was, let's start fresh and let's not let this ugly incident basically define the foundation of our colleague rapport. Mind you that I only knew him for like a few days before we had this meeting. The initial meeting about Trans Awareness Week. Yeah, and then it was a lot calmer. The meeting we had, the second meeting where we made up. He took accountability for his actions. He was apologetic. He started actioning things and doing things differently, such as reading about trans experiences online to self-educate. And I learned stuff too about, some people are really trying here, and they don't mean to they don't mean to hurt me, but they're just really enthusiastic and just didn't know the best way to approach the topic, but they have their heart and their intention in the right place, just the delivery is really bad. And it's taught me to be like more open to like building connections with people even after I've been hurt like this in terms of trans trauma. So I learned stuff from this, and I took accountability for my part. He took accountability for his part. We both made up. We've resolved the conflict and everything's all good now. And as much as I fucking hated the conflict. It was so uncomfortable. I hated confronting him. I hated confronting the situation. I could have ran away forever. But the longer I tried to run away, the worse my mental health got, and the more my subconscious was like, you can't run forever. The only long-term solution to this is actually confront him, confront the situation. I was scared. I was scared because traumatized, and I was really scared. But I did it anyway because I didn't want to live in torment of having to run away forever. So yeah, that's an example, and this whole section's almost 5 minutes. Anyway. So the point of me sharing this example is to illustrate that it's not necessarily the conflict itself that's problematic. It's how both parties or all people or parties involved in the certain conflict resolve the situation. It's like whatever happened, it may be a one-off incident or some long-standing incident. It's how the situation itself might be problematic, but how it's resolved and dealt with also plays into how problematic the whole thing is, the whole bigger situation is. And conflict resolution is hard. Confrontation is hard. I hate it. And I'm sure a lot of you hate it too. No one likes conflict. And no one likes confronting conflict. But it really does make your life easier in the long run. It definitely makes my life easier in the long run. And I'm pretty sure it will make your life easier in the long run. It stinks. And having the grudge, clash with certain people, and just the clash when you're in a shared environment, it's just not fun. It's a vibe killer, and it's not nice. So working together in a way, and again, it involves both parties or all parties in the conflict to want to take action, be accountable, and wanting to make change. Yes, in terms of back to relationship stuff, that was also important relationship because communication is key, transparency, honesty, everything is key. All human connection that is meaningful and deep. I find transparency important, honesty important, being able, again with the being accountable and willing to take action, all important. But what was I gonna say? I lost my train of thought again. Something I realize in hindsight now that I didn't realize early on is how important an independent partner is to me. What does that mean? So when I say independent now I'm just thinking about the thing I said at the start. I didn't elaborate on it about doing my own stuff, which I will. Having a meaningful life independent of a relationship, as in they do things, they have dreams, they have goals, they're working towards stuff. Someone who values growth and learning and bettering themselves and stuff like that. Just working on themselves and doing stuff in life that is meaningful to them, independent of a relationship. Because to me, relationship is, I don't believe in the whole two halves coming in together to form a whole. It's two whole people with whole lives journeying together through life and connecting with each other in the relationship sense. It's not, I bring half of me and you bring half of you into a relationship and both of us form a whole. And it's like, I don't want the other person, I don't like the other half idea either, because the other person is not my other half. I am a my whole self. I am a whole person. The other half, the other person does not become my other half, and half of me is lost, and I need half of another person to fill me. Like, I don't like that wording. Like, I don't know what the deeper idea might be, but I really don't like that wording about my other half. It's like, no, I don't have another half. I am already whole. Yes, and in terms of independence, someone's like on my level, similar on my levels, but like doing their own thing, growing, having goals, having ambitions, working towards stuff. Yeah. And I also realized in hindsight that, actually I'll get to that after this. In terms of, since we're I'm sorry, I'm jumping like topic. Since we're on the topic of independence, like in terms of more time, I have a lot more time to, I think I mentioned this, like talk to friends, hang out with friends, work on my creative projects, play video games, have more me time on weekends, because I work full time, as in 5 days a week, weekdays, which only leaves me 2 full days on the weekends to actually do stuff. And when I was with my ex, a lot of my weekends were hanging out with them. And therefore, I really didn't have proper me time or sufficient time and energy to do stuff for myself, such as drums, riding motorbike, doing music stuff, video games. I'm not saying I didn't do any of my independent activities, but I had a lot less time and a lot less energy to do it. Because again, relationship takes a shit ton of energy from me, and it's a very big investment for me. This isn't the thing that I was trying to say before. I completely lost that train of thought, but this is a different note. Later, I guess 6 months in-ish, into the relationship with my ex, they told me, I found out actually an important piece of information because I brought up something and then they mentioned it and I'm like, wait, what? And the piece of information is that they were engaged to their ex for 2 years. And I knew they were in a long-term relationship with their ex, right? But I didn't know that they were engaged for 2 years. And I didn't find out this until someone in my family is getting engaged, and then I was talking about rings, and then they mentioned getting rings, engagement rings, and in my head I'm like, wait, why did you get engagement rings? And then they told me they were engaged with their ex for 2 years. And I did not know this information at the start, and they wouldn't have raised it up. Like, they didn't tell me otherwise. The only reason it was raised, and the only reason I found out about that, is because someone in my family is getting engaged, and then I raised that, and then they're like, oh, on that, I used to get rings. So That's really frustrated me when I found out, because in my head I'm like, this is an important piece of information. Why didn't you tell me this at the start? Like early on in our dating together and not 6 months in. And that really frustrated me. Like, this is what I mean with this is the stuff I refer to when there's a lack of like communication and transparency and honesty. Like, it's like, no, you don't have to tell me every single detail about your life. But being engaged with your ex for 2 years and us being in a relationship is pretty damn important for me to know. I just, and I guess following on from this, it's like, it makes me think I'm a rebound, because I'm reflecting now, and in the, I won't elaborate on details, but in the timeline and everything, I'm like, there's no way anyone can be ready for a new relationship less than 2 months after breaking up with their ex who they've been engaged with. Just in general, I'm like, there's no way. And now I'm just thinking, I was like, highly likely that I'm a rebound. I was used in a way as an emotional grounding person, or I don't know, distraction in a way. And the whole thing's just fucked. Like, the whole thing's just fucked. I swear. The whole thing's just fucked. And I share that because it's definitely a learning lesson for me. And it's like a red flag to keep in mind. It's like, I guess someone with time, someone in terms of relationship with time, if they're not willing to talk about stuff and share such important information, like this, it's just, it's a sign that something's up. It's a sign something's up. And the other thing, I did mention this in my other video too, is my subconscious and my gut feeling, something felt off the entire time, and I knew stuff was problematic. But another lesson is I didn't listen to my gut. I knew there were problems, and the problems I did raise with them, but then I was just kept being given false reassurance that it's fine and it's fine and it's fine and that we can work through it together. And my gut wasn't okay with that. My subconscious wasn't okay with that. And I kept feeling like shit. Yes, I didn't listen to my subconscious or gut. I continuously felt like shit, and like I kept feeling like down and like a heavy burden and feeling on me. And for me, the reason I feel like shit like at the time is because my subconscious is telling me something, my gut is telling me something, but I'm not listening to it. I'm not listening to it. The example before about my workplace colleague, I felt the same heaviness and the same garbage feeling I had in the relationship, but that quickly disappeared when I took action and I resolved the conflict. But this feeling during the relationship, it lasted months. It lasted months because, again, I kept raising stuff. It kept getting denied, and I kept being given false reassurance even though nothing was being done and we weren't gonna do shit about it. It was more like, oh, something in the future we can sort out. Don't worry about it now, we can sort it out in future. I'm like, but this is a problem. If we don't sort it out now, it will still be a problem in future. But then I didn't, again, was not met halfway, and then they ran the other way while I bring the problem here and they ran the other way. Like, and that's where that's the mistake I made, is not listening to my gut because something was wrong. And indeed, everything came to light and there were many things wrong. And now in hindsight, I realized there were many more things wrong. And that's why I felt like garbage. My gut was telling me something. So another lesson for me is, don't ignore my gut. Don't ignore my subconscious. I'm saying for me, I know how my physical and mental state works. If I continuously feel like shit and there's nothing, and then I have it and identified the problem, but it's not being done and nothing's being done about it, and it's gonna continue to be problematic. Then look, if I try to work out stuff with someone and I give it months and I give them chances and they're not willing to talk to me about it or work through it for me, then bailing out is an option. It's an option. And I refuse to continue now in future moving forward. I refuse to continue letting myself feel ill, letting myself not feel good mentally, to live with the possibility of something changing. The possibility of something changing, even if it's my partner or the relationship that I don't want lost. However, yeah, it's sort of battle because it's like I didn't want the relationship to end, but I didn't want to terminate it, but I also didn't want to ignore myself and this feeling that something's wrong here. So I gave it a chance. Didn't work out. In future, like, not saying run away immediately when there's a problem, but try to work through it and give it some time, give the other person time to come around. And if nothing happens for months and I continue to feel like I'm neglecting myself and dishonoring myself, then like literally the likely answer is I'm fucking off now, because again, I don't want to stick around for the possibility of change happen. It's like, if I wait for months and then nothing changes, or the other person in general is not willing to talk to me through it and work with me through conflict or whatever problem there is, then lived in possibility of something changing for months. I'm not going to live another year, 2 years, 3 years with this. It's like, I know what I need. I know what we can do to help fix this problem. And it's just like the other person just needs to be willing to take accountability and fucking take action. That's it. Like, fucking hell. Again, confrontation is hard. I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying it's fun either. But it makes everyone's lives easier when it's just dealt with then and there, sort of this lingering, shitty feeling vibe between two people, the parties involved. It's sort of vice versa too. Like, if I'm not willing to fight or put in effort and resolve things and expect the other person to carry all of my weight, and me not giving a shit and not doing anything about anything, and if the other person's like, I'm sick of you, Lev, like, you're not doing shit and I've been trying to work with you for God knows how long and you're not really doing anything in this relationship, and they leave, no, I'm not, like, it's like, yeah, fair enough. It's to be expected. You're putting in the work, you're trying to make things happen, and I'm here just in avoidance and denial and not wanting to do anything. Yeah, like, it's like very understandable if they're like, I'm fucking done with you. Like, I filmed the last segment of my video and then the audio died and it didn't record and the signal got interfered, so I'm refilming the last part of my video. Last point before I end the video is, it's okay to be picky. And for me, moving forward, given my relationship experiences and the wealth of knowledge I've gained and all of the shit shows I've been through, I'm gonna be picky, and I would rather very much be single than repeat history again. I'd rather be single than repeat history again of being in relationships that are turbulent, where there's lack of effort from the other side, unwillingness to work through conflicts and stuff like that. I just repeat. It's happened 3 times and I really don't want to repeat that again. I really don't have the energy to repeat all that again. And I'm glad I had all these shit show experiences, because it's taught me what I need in a relationship, what works for me in a relationship, green flags, red flags, how I operated in relationships. And it wasn't fun for me at first. Like, I was over dependent on the person, so I learned a lot about myself, made a lot of mistakes, fucked up a lot, but also learnt a lot from it ultimately became better versions of myself progressively with each experience and lesson I learned, and with time just growing to become more wiser, know how to deal with conflict better, being more assertive, being more confident, all of this good stuff that come out of these shit shows I am using for future. And if you watch all the way, if you watch the entirety of this video and any of my other videos, thank you so much. I don't know what to say, but thank you, and thank you for the support. Thank you for listening and watching me share my experiences. And I hope you enjoy. I hope you find value in it. And even though sometimes I don't know what I say until I edit it, sometimes I ramble on camera and then I edit it and be like, I have no idea where that came from or how I came up with that, but that's interesting. Thank you so much, folks, for watching, and I will see you in the next video. And thank you for your continued support.